Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the Buff Par Golf Show. We've got another episode this weekend and it's a big one this weekend. It's the US Open Championship 2021. I'm so excited for this tournament this weekend. It's going to be great, especially with this whole kind of Bryson and Brooks beef going on. We've got a defending champion against one that just knows how to win in the US Open, and they clearly don't like each other. It's going to be so awesome this week. What have we got this weekend then? So it's Torrey Pines down in San Diego, California. We've got a beautiful golf course that goes right along that San Diego coastline. So it's going to be a beautiful weekend, I think, in terms of weather. There shouldn't be too many issues there. Maybe a little bit of wind with it being on the coastline. It's a longish course this weekend again, a par 71. I believe that hole 6 has been changed from a par 5 to a par 4, making it that 71. In terms of the layout, it's got thick rough. There's some deep bunkers I'm hearing around the course, as well as just regular ones. But the big one, I think, which is going to be key this weekend, is very small greens. So if we're looking in terms of the key factors this weekend with the layout, I think there's going to be a couple. It's going to be those small greens and how well these players can hit them. And the second one is the fairways. The fairways are going to be pretty tough to hit this weekend as well. So I think this driving accuracy is going to be key over the driving distance this weekend at Torrey Pines. So it's going to be really interesting to see, because a lot of the recent years in the US Open, it's some of the big hitters that have been winning that tournament. Whereas Torrey Pines now, it's a little bit of a different animal. It's more about accuracy off the tee, I think, rather than length. So as always on this show, I'm going to talk about who's in the field, who are some of the favourites to probably win it. Who are maybe some of the mid-range favourites to finish, let's say, top 10, top 5, or have an outside chance of winning. And then also the outsiders, the ones that, again, I think maybe finish in top 25, top 10 if they're playing well, and if they're playing outstanding all weekend, then possibly even have a chance of winning on the outside odds. Now, all of the odds here that all of the data here that you can see in the stats, I just want to give a shout out to Rick Gaiman, Rick Run Good. This is his tool where he collects all this kind of data on every single tournament, every single player. And yeah, I just want to give a shout out to him because I'm using all this data this weekend, and I'll be using it in the future to give you guys some information. If you guys are interested in getting some golf stats like this, and I'm going to talk you all through it, definitely check this guy out, rickrungood.com. It's a really, really awesome tool, and there's more than one in there, as you can see here. So moving on to the favourites then, who we think the favourites are for this week. I'm going to start with this man, Jon Rahm. Talking point, obviously, recently with his positive COVID test at his last tournament. So it's going to be interesting to see which Jon Rahm comes out this weekend. He's been picked as the absolute favourite in the field this weekend by a lot of the betting companies. Personally, I've got Brooks down as the big favourite. But Jon Rahm's going to be interested. It just depends which one turns up. I mean, he was so hot in his last tournament. He got that putter going really well, which is not normally his strong suit. We can see in here he's been in some decent form. He had that 8th in the PGA. He had the 7th in the Zurich, 5th in the Masters, and then the win for me in his last tournament. And in the US Open, he's had a 3rd place before and a couple of top 25s. So I think based off that and the way he was playing, it makes sense that he is the big favourite. I mean, he's got 3 top 10s in his last 6 tournaments, and that's apart from the win. And I think he's having his best ball striking season so far. The only issue for me is how that COVID has affected him, right? We don't know what the sort of symptoms were for him. We don't know whether it's affected him in terms of his sleep. Is he tired? Is he going to be feeling fatigued? So I think that's going to be a big part of it. And, he's not just coming back for any old tournament. He's coming back for a major after COVID, whereas all the other guys are going to be fresh, well rested. So it's going to be interesting to see. Moving on to DJ. Obviously, he's always a favourite in most tournaments. We all know his recent form recently. It's not been great. It's not been horrible. I mean, the last time out, he finished tied 10th at the Palmetto Championship. But we saw some hiccups there. He had some good moments. He looked like he was going to run away with it after day 1. But then I also saw some shots and some holes on day 4 where I think he had a double or a triple bogey. I think it was one of those tournaments for a player like him where we expected it to be one where he kind of finds his feet again and just finds his form, maybe tries some new stuff and irons some stuff out. And that is all with the US Open in mind. So I'm pretty sure DJ is going to come out big. If we're looking at kind of his US Open form, we can see here the last 5 US Opens for him. He's had a top 6, he's had a top 3 and a win, obviously, back in 2016. But then at the same time, he's had, T35 is not too bad, but for a player like DJ, you expect better. And he's had a missed cut. So a little bit inconsistent, but then if you're looking at that, the last 5 years, 3 top 6s, including one of them being a win, is pretty impressive. And we know DJ, I'm pretty sure he's going to be well up for this weekend. So it's quite rightly a favourite. Bryson DeChambeau, like I said at the start of the show, it's going to be super interesting for me this weekend, watching him versus Brook. I think they're just both going to have that kind of extra oomph in them in terms of wanting to beat the other. It's going to be really, really interesting. We know that Bryson dominated Winged Foot in the last US Open when he won in 2020. But we are talking about a different animal. Driving accuracy is going to be a little bit more important this time instead of maybe length off the tee. And from what I've seen from Bryson, he is driving it ridiculously far, but a lot of the time he's getting himself in trouble in the rough or in the trees in the hazard areas. So I'm not sure that's going to work at Torrey Pines, as we've kind of seen him get caught out with recently with a lot of the tournaments where he says he's going to dominate. So he's up there in terms of the betting favourites, but for me he's not one of the favourites in terms of let's say top 3 this year. Which brings me on to the next one, which for me personally, and looks like it is with one of the ones in the bookies as well, is Brooks Koepka. He's definitely got to be a favourite. We all know Brooks Koepka's history in the US Open. It's just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, if we look here at his last 5 US Opens, obviously he missed that 2020 tournament with the hip and the knee injury, I think it was. But then if we look before that, it's just ridiculous form. A second place in 2019, and then he won it 2018, 2017, as we know, and also a 13th place the year before that. In terms of recent form, it's been really iffy. He's missed a few cuts, as we can see here. But he did have that second place at the PGA. And again, I think it's just one of those players where this is the one he's been looking for. This is the one that he had circled on his calendar, and he's going to be ready, and he's going to want to beat Bryson more than anything as well. So for me, he's got to be up there with probably the favourite over some of the other in the favourite fields. Now, a couple that I want to touch on, which, to be honest, I was completely stuck in between the two in terms of who to choose, but I think they need a mention, and that's Xander Schauffele, first of all. The guy has got a ridiculous record as well at the US Open. If we're looking just like we did here with Brooks Koepka here in the last 4 US Opens in this case, he's got a 5th, a 3rd, a 6th and a 5th. Like, that's just immense numbers. Obviously no win in terms of this tournament and hasn't got a major. But could this be his year? I mean, he's in good form again. He's had that recent T11. He did miss a cut at the PGA, but pretty much everybody did. He's had a 14th, 11th, so he's in some good form. I think he likes this course. It's going to suit him pretty well. So Xander was up there for me. I mean, he's been dominating tee to green this season. His scrambling and putting ability is going to be a bit of the worry. But if he's hitting those greens, then he should be absolutely fine. So yeah, let's see what he can do. I mean, we're waiting for him to win again. It's been, I think, since 2019 since he last won a PGA Tour event. So I'm hoping that he gets a win soon, because he's a good guy and I think he's got a great chance this weekend. And then the second guy out of those two that I just had to mention, and to be honest, I couldn't choose between the two when I was trying to compare them. And the second one is Collin Morikawa, another player that just completely dominates tee to green, more so than Schauffele. I think if you look back at the last, say, 18 rounds or 36 rounds, whatever it is, Morikawa is there on dominating tee to green every single time. It's just incredible. Similar to Schauffele, his scrambling and putting ability is questionable. Whether he's going to kind of get that on fire to be able to help him win this tournament, I think for me is always the question, because unless he's just hitting all those greens like we are used to him doing with the irons, he's going to struggle in the rough and with his putting. So for me, it depends what Morikawa turns up with the short stick and how he plays around the green a little bit. But I'm really interested to see him play this year. I think he's going to be in with a real big chance to win. Now, a couple of the others I wanted to mention in the favourites, but to be honest, weren't really up there for me in terms of being a favourite compared to the others in that list. The first one is Jordan Spieth. We all know what the guy's been doing recently. We all know what he's capable of. We look at his recent form here. He's had the 18th where he didn't play particularly well, but he had that second at the Charles Schwab Challenge. He had the T30 at the PGA, and then he had the 9th after the 3rd at the Masters. So yeah, you look at his recent form and everything tells you he should be playing well. He is playing well, but then I look at this side and I'm like, okay, so the US Open record just isn't that great. He's missed 2 of the cuts in the last 3 years, and the other finishes weren't particularly great, with a 65, a 35 and a 37. So yeah, I just don't think he's got a good US Open record. He's another player that obviously knows how to win, wants to win, and will want to be up for this major, but everything's telling me to stay away from him this week. Justin Thomas is another strange one, to be honest. One of very few in this list, but he's a real strange one in terms of what he's doing at the moment. He's obviously another incredible player, one that can just heat up in a minute, but if you look at his recent form, it's not been good. He's had a 26th there, a 13th place, we can see, in a 21st in the Masters, but then the last 3 events that he's played in, he's had a missed cut and in the PGA, which again a lot of people did, but then he's had a 40th and 42nd here. The big worry for Justin Thomas is his driving and his putting, and that's not a good combination. As I said, I think hitting fairways is going to be big here, and the putting's going to be needed, I think, on these greens. So if he's not got those working for him, or both of them, at least one of them, he's going to really struggle. But I think the big thing with Justin, he's just not been in the right mindset. The thing with the putting is it's not just him missing putts, it's his reaction after missing the putts. He seemed like he's really down at the moment, hangs his head a lot, gets a little bit frustrated. So although he is going to be one of the favourites, I'm not sure he's going to be competing for first place, but he could be pretty strong for maybe a top 5, a top 3. So if we move on to the picks from me now, in that top category, the 2 that I'm going to go for this week is number 1, Brooks Koepka. Had to go for him. I mean, again, I'm not going to go through it again, but his history in this US Open is just absolutely ridiculous. I think that fire with Bryson is going to really give him some extra this weekend, and I'm hoping that he's going to go on and lift that trophy again. And the second one was a really, really tough one, and this is why I said I didn't know who to pick between these 2, was Schauffele and Morikawa. I've been thinking about this a lot. I had to make a decision, and I've gone with Schauffele. I'm hoping that it's going to be finally his time. Morikawa, I think, has a little bit of an advantage in terms of he's won a major before. Schauffele, he's just, obviously, like I said before, he's not won since 19, and he had that really good performance in the Masters, whereby he then just kind of slipped and made some mistakes, and again looked like another player that looked a little bit down. But I am going to go for Schauffele this weekend. I'm going to put my faith in him. So just to go through the odds on all these players, Ram was 19-2. We've got DJ at 15s. Bryson at 16, Koepka at 18-1, which I think is nice. Xander also at 18-1, which is, for me, it's not big enough considering Koepka's 18s. Morikawa at 19, Spieth at 21s, and then we've got Justin Thomas at 23s. Now, moving on to the midfield, this is where, for me, it gets super, super interesting. We've got so many good players here. Ones, again, which was just really difficult to choose between. First one in the field is Tony Finau, another player that seems to love this course, and I'm going to go into this quite a bit with the midfield. I think there's a lot of players here that seem to love this course at Torrey Pines. Tony's had 4 top 10s in 7 events at Torrey Pines. which kind of tells you everything. He's, like I said, he's really, really loving this course. And if we look at his US Open past, he has had an 8th place there and a 5th place, but then he's also had a couple of missed cuts. So I think that just kind of sums up Tony Finau recently, to be honest. He's another player where you just don't know what you're going to get from the man. Another one that is searching for another win after a long time. So what are we going to get from him? Who knows? But I think he has to be one of the favourites from this midfield section, just based off the fact that how well he seems to play around this course. Another one on the list, which is a player that I absolutely love, and he's just been playing some incredible golf recently. The last couple, not so much, but before that he went on a really, really nice run, is Viktor Hovland. So he's another player that seems to like this course. If you have a look at it, he's got a decent US Open record. I mean, he's played the last 2 years and he's got 2 top 15s there with a 12th and a 13th position, as we can see here. And then if we look at his recent form, like I said, the last couple has been iffy, but then we can see here he's had that 3rd place at the Wells Fargo, he had the 3rd place the week before that, and then he also got 25th at the Zurich Classic, and a 21st at the Masters. The big thing for Hovland, I think, like always, is that short game. It seems to be getting better. He's working on it, and it does seem to be getting better. I'm just not sure he's got that full package altogether yet, especially not to win at a US Open against a really, really tough field. The next player on the list is Patrick Reed. Another interesting player for this week. He's coming off a top 5 recently. I think he got in the last tournament. He had a really good weekend. Another player that loves this golf course. He actually won there in January, I think, by 5 shots in the Farmers on that very course. So for me, that was like a big green flag when I saw him pop up in the list here. So I think he's going to be an interesting pick, and he comes in at 28-1, so quite a nice mid-range pick. After that, I'm looking at Will Zalatoris next. I think I watched him at the Masters. I've seen him at the US Open before, where I think he finished tied 6th. He finished tied 2nd at the Masters, of course, behind Matsuyama, and he had the tied 8th at the PGA. I just think he seems to get up for it when it's the majors. He seems to really enjoy the majors and those big occasions. You know, again, looking at him at the Masters, he just never seemed phased. He seemed really cool, calm and collected all the way till the end. Maybe there was a couple of rookie shots in there, but he was absolutely fantastic. I think the only weakness with Will is his putting, so he does really need to sort that out if he's gonna compete and win this weekend. And he comes in at 41-1, which is again nice odds for a mid-range pick. Next couple on the list are, I was kind of in between putting them on and not putting them on. But Daniel Berger is one that comes in as, you know, a mid-range pick. I think, again, you know, we're talking players here that could finish in top 25, top 10. He seems to like the shorter golf courses, which I think he's going to go against him with Torrey Pines being a bit longer this year. But with Daniel, he doesn't really have the best record at the US Open either. So if we look at Daniel's stats here, we can see recently he's been okay. He's had the 20th, the 3rd, which is nice, but then he had that 75 and he missed the cut at the Masters, but then had a 13th the week after. If you look at his US Open form, not great. There's a 6th in there in 2018, but apart from that, it's been a fairly, you know, disappointing finish for him. So yeah, I don't think Daniel's one of my favourites this week, but looking at that kind of mid-range pack, he had to be one of the ones that stood out against the others for me. Justin Rose is the second one. A player that's been in some nice form recently. Not great, not bad. He got a 20th place there at the Charles Schwab Challenge. He's got the 8th at the PGA, but then he missed the cut at the Wells Fargo. But he did get in a little bit of a run. He had some nice form over the last kind of few months. And if we look at his US Open history, it's also a bit of a mixed bag. I mean, Justin's obviously got nice memories of that win in 2013. However, he does have 3 missed cuts in the last 5 years, but followed up with a 3rd place in only 2 years ago in 2019, and a top 10 only 3 years ago in 2018. So it could be a decent little player to have a mid-range bet on. 47-1 this weekend. Like I said, I think he's got some happy memories here in terms of the US Open. So he could be, you know, a mid-range pick that could surprise us this week. The next on the list is Phil Mickelson. So I think we have to talk about this guy, right? Like what he could achieve this weekend in terms of the Grand Slam is going to be really, really cool to watch. I mean, I kind of hope he does it just because, I love the guy. He's had 6 US Open runner-ups, I think, chasing that Grand Slam, like I said. However, I mean, if you look at his recent form in the US Open, he just hasn't played that well. A miscut last year and a miscut in 2016 with a couple of, we've got a 52 there and a 48 in 2 and 3 years ago. In terms of recent form, he had that miscut, the Charles Schwab, just after winning, probably because he was too busy celebrating the PGA. But obviously he had that amazing PGA win, which I think has filled him with confidence. It's kind of made people believe that he's back. And I think it's fair to say that I'm not the only one that's rooting him on this weekend to complete that Grand Slam. So let's see what Phil can do. One of the other picks which I really like this weekend in this section is Louis Oosthuizen. I think he's been on a really good run recently, both in just general tournaments but also in the US Open. He's had 5 top 25s in the last 5 US Opens, including 2 top 10s, and which came in the last 2 US Opens, and he's also had 4 top 25s in the last 5 tournaments in general, with 3 of those being top 10s, and we can see that here in the form charts. And one big fact that I learned this morning about Louis as well, about Louis, is that he has not missed a cut in any major since 2017, which I think is an incredible fact. And we can just see here it's just green across the board. He looks like a real nice pick from this mid-range this weekend, so I'm really looking forward to seeing him play, and he comes in at 50-1, which I think is a nice big price. Just to mention a few more really quickly over the mid-range, we've got Abraham Ancer, the Mexican. I try and talk about him pretty much every week just because I love this guy. I love the way he plays. He's had some great form as well recently. We can see here he's had that 14th in the Charles Schwab Challenge, 8th in the PGA, and then the 2nd in the Wells Fargo. And it's again just green across the board in terms of his recent form. Beautiful striker with the ball, beautiful iron player. He's going to hit a lot of greens. He's accurate off the tee, when he wants to be. So I think he's got a real big chance of putting a strong performance in this weekend and hopefully even getting a win. Another player on here which I kind of divvied with putting on just because of the last tournament is Corey Connors, but I just couldn't resist because of how this guy's been playing over the last few months. He hasn't got a good US Open record. He's missed the cut twice in the last 5 years, and that's the only 2 he's played in the last 5 years, as we can see here. So that makes me a little bit worried about Corey. But if we look at his recent form, like I said, he's had a 20th, 17th, and then he had the 4th at the RBC and 8th at the Masters, which he was just playing some really good golf. He just seemed to have slipped off the cliff a little bit, but again, still a beautiful ball striker, and had some decent recent form, which I think is going to put him in good stead this weekend. Now, the next man I want to talk about is, I have to kind of I'm not going to take credit because I didn't say he was going to exactly win and he was the favourite. But this great story of Garrick Higgo, I think, could carry on this weekend again. I did have him down as one that I thought would do well, and it ended up proving me right. He had an absolutely incredibly consistent weekend, played some great golf, and managed to get yet another win. I mean, this guy is just ridiculous. Again, another fact I found out this morning is that he's won 7 tournaments out of the last 47 that he's played across the European Tour and the PGA. I think that's just a ridiculous stat. And the way he came in last week to get that maiden win was just incredible. So yeah, I mean, look, maybe he doesn't win this week, but I see this guy definitely competing again. He looks like he's the real deal, and I'm really looking forward to seeing him play this weekend. Next one on the list, a man that knows, again, the US Open well is Gary Woodland. I think he's got some nice history here. He obviously won the US Open in 2019, so he definitely knows how to do it around here. And I think he's just kind of picked up form recently. I mean, he missed the cut in his last tournament, but then before that, the Charles Schwab, he got a 14th, and we can see here he got the 5th at the Wells Fargo. He just seemed to show some of the old Gary Woodland. We know he's had like injuries, as well as him, obviously getting a little bit older now. So whether he's got enough to go ahead and win this US Open Championship this weekend, we're gonna find out. But I think he's a nice price at 90 to 1 to win. I'd be interested to see what it was for a top 5, let's say. So yeah, it could be a good little pick there. And then a couple of other players that I've mentioned in this midsection is Sam Burns. Again, I've mentioned him a couple of times. He comes in at 110 to 1 this weekend. And that's really like one of the reasons why I chose him, because that's a good price. The only doubt, again, as I mentioned last weekend, is his back. I know he had that back injury, which I think he suffered. He missed the cut at the PGA. I think that's when it happened to him. So he missed the cut there, and then he had the 50th place in the last tournament he played in. But before that, he was in superb form. He got the second at the Byron Nelson. He obviously had that win, and then he got the 4th place at Zurich as well. In terms of US Open experience, he's only had a couple. We can see here he played in 2016 and missed the cut, and then in 2018 finished 41st. So yeah, I guess it really is just about how he feels and whether he's actually recovered or if he's kind of pushing himself back at the moment just to play the major. We'll see. And then the last one is Kevin Streelman. I think he's a solid player. He's been playing really well recently. His last 3 tournaments, I think he's had, were all top 20s actually. I just checked the stats here, but I'm pretty sure his last 3 tournaments were all top 20s. Yeah, we can see here 13th, for 20th and an 8th. And then he's also had a 26th there, 33rd, with a couple missed cuts. So, considering he's 181, he looks like he's in really good form recently. And that's exactly what you want going into a big major like this. So let's see if he can cause some surprises at 180 to 1. Now, in terms of my picks out of this, again, this was the most difficult one to pick out of. It really was hurting my brain just trying to think about this. But I've finally landed on 2 picks, and I'm going for Patrick Reed as the number 1. Like I said, I think the way he dominated this course in January and won by 5 strokes at the Farmers is giving me a whole lot of confidence to back him this weekend. He's coming in at 28 to 1, like I said earlier. And then the second one is Louis Oosthuizen. Again, I've read out those stats before, the ridiculous recent form and the even more ridiculous US form that he's got. I just could not ignore him at 50 to 1. I think this is going to be the one that's going to win a lot of people money next on Sunday. In terms of outsiders now, I've noted a few down. There's a lot of kind of outsiders in terms of people that just probably won't win. Maybe we'll get into top 5, top 10s. So I've tried to find a couple whereby I think maybe they could really shock us with a win, but at a minimum they're probably going to be getting a top 25 or a top 10. And the first one on this list is Charles Schwartzel. I think he's been playing really well recently as well. Just going to pull up his stats here so we can have a look at that. Help if I spelt it right, maybe. So it's not working, I don't know why. But I can tell you he's had 4 top 25 finishes in the last 7 tournaments, including a second at the Zurich Classic and a third at the at the Ryder Nelson. I'm just going to try one more time just to get his stats up here to show you. There we go, it's working now. So you can see here the recent form that I'm talking about. He's had that 3rd place, he's had a 14th place, a 21st and a 2nd recently. However, he did have a missed cut only a few weeks ago, and then a 53rd a couple of weeks ago. But I think, like I said, those top 25 finishes for me in the last 7 tournaments, considering he's 210 to 1, is what's given me confidence of backing this player this week. So yeah, he's my first pick of the kind of outsiders. Zach Johnson is coming in at 281 to 1 this weekend. I think he's another decent option for that price. 3 top 12s in the last 5 US Opens, which I think is a pretty impressive stat. He obviously knows what he's doing in this tournament. We can see here he was 1/8, 1/12, 1/8, and then another one where he finished 27th. If we're looking at his recent form, it's not been anything to write home about. A 32nd there and a 29th with a couple of missed cuts. So his recent form has been up and down, but again, in terms of an outsider at big odds, he looks like a man that knows how to play well in the US Open. So they're my actual 2 picks for the outsiders. In terms of the ones that I decided not to pick in the outsiders, I'm going to start with that now and just give you an idea of some others that may be worth backing for, like I said, to try and get a top 10 or a top 25. Brendan Steele is the first one. This guy's not missed a cut in 2021, I believe. So he's obviously doing something right. He's finished top 15 at the US Open in 2016 and 2017. So again, another decent outsider that's coming in with some form. And then the next one on the list is Jonathan Vegas, which is a guy that I'm a big fan of. He's been playing some great golf recently. If we look at his stats here, he's had that second place in the Palmetto Championship last weekend. He had the ninth place in the Byron Nelson. If we look at his US Open form, not great. He's played the last three years, and two of them have been missed cuts, with one 41st place. So not the best US Open form, but for an outsider that's coming in at 290 to 1, he's in a little bit of decent form, like I said, especially with that second place last weekend in what was a weaker field, but still had to beat some good players to finish in that second. A couple more players that I've got to mention here. I'm going to scan over them really quickly. One is Cameron Young. He's a player that's been mainly playing in the Corn Ferry Tour, but I wanted to kind of pick a few real outsiders. Now this guy's won back-to-back Corn Ferry Tour tournaments in May, so he could be somebody that might surprise us, like I said, with a top 25 or top 10. He's 351 just to win, so I'd like to see what his odds are up to finish in top 10 maybe, or top 25. Another player in this section is Caballero. He's had 40 finish. He's had some top 40 finishes in the US Open before, and he's also had some top 40 finishes recently. So I think for an outsider, it's pretty good stats, because it just shows that he's at least pretty consistent in terms of getting up the leaderboard. We can see here he's had the 37th, 32nd, and then he even had a top 25 here with the 21st. And then in terms of the US Open, he finished in the top 25 last year, and he's had a 36, 42 and a 32 there in the US Open. So it's kind of like across the board green, a little bit of consistency there. Like I said, coming in at 400 to 1, he could be a good little outside bet for getting in the top 25 or the top 10. And then I've got two more players. One is an Englishman, which I'm really loving watching at the moment. Recently won on the European Tour, and that's Richard Bland. He just had that win, as I said, and also another decent little finish after that. I think he just seems in really good form at the moment, but more importantly, just seems in like a really good headspace. I listened to an interview with him recently after that win, and I think just the way, like the story he told and the way he told it just shows kind of what he's been through and what he's had to work to get to this point now. And he just seems like a man in good form, and I think he's going to come in and really enjoy this course this weekend. And then the final one on the outsiders list is Justin Suh. This guy is a former USC, go Trojans. 2 professional starts at the Farmers Insurance Open. He finished 37th earlier this season in one of those. I saw an interview with him where he said he's played, apparently I saw an interview where they mentioned that he played Torrey Pines about 20 times in his life during like junior and college golf, which I think is going to come in good stead. He's a former world #1 ranked amateur, and he turned pro with the likes of like Hovland and Morikawa back in 2019. But I think it sounds like he's going to have a ton of confidence playing this course this weekend. It seems one that he's really familiar with. So yeah, he could have a really good weekend. So yeah, that's it for the picks. Like I said, for the outsiders, I've gone with Zach Johnson and Charles Schwartzel. In the mid-range picks, I've gone with Louis Oosthuizen and Patrick Reed. And then the favourites, which again was really tough, I've gone for good old Brooks Koepka and Jan Le Chaufflet to get that win. Let's see how they do. Let me know what you guys are thinking. Let me know who you're going to bet on this week. Who's your outsiders? Who do you think is going to have a good weekend? And yeah, I look forward to hearing you guys in the comments. Drop me a like if you like this video, and make sure you hit that subscribe button as well with the bell notification so that you can subscribe for future content. And I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Enjoy this weekend.